Hi, this is Ali Aranga of Little Guy CGI, and today I would like to show you how to have a vehicle mesh transform into a robot mesh in Blender 2.79. So let's get started. Okay, if this is your first time in Blender, I recommend you go to File, User Preferences, go to Input, and then choose Select with left click. Blender's default select is with right click, and this may confuse you if you're coming from Adobe programs or other 3D programs. Also, while you're in here, click on Add-ons, then put a check mark next to 3D View, 3D Navigation, then scroll down. Put a check mark next to Pie Menu, 3D Viewport Pie Menus. Also put a check mark next to Pie Menu, UI, Pie Menu Official. Okay, what you see in front of you is the result of 4 other tutorials. The first tutorial that we did was we made a vehicle mode. So here is that vehicle right here. So the goal was to have this vehicle turn into this robot. I had done a tutorial on showing how to do a transforming robot a few years ago. That was doing with a jet turning into a robot. The way I did this is, the way this transformation is going to go is different than that one. If you've happened to see that one, I really like the look of how this turned out, and I am looking forward to showing this to you guys. So here we go. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to hold shift. While holding shift, we're going to left click on our layer that had our vehicle mode selected on, just to temporarily hide that for now. Now what we're going to do is go to our display tab over to our left. We're then going to click front. If you look to your upper left, you can see we're in front orthographic mode. What we're going to do now with our armature selected, make sure you have it selected, it being the armature, and you can tell the armature is selected because it's highlighted orange. We're then going to go near the bottom of our page, left click, and then we're going to select pose mode to go into pose mode. Okay, here in pose mode, we're going to press A to select our entire rig. And then with that rig selected, we're going to hold Alt. While holding Alt, we're going to press R. Still holding Alt, I'm going to press G. And when I pressed Alt R, I reset the rotation of our rig. When I held Alt G, I reset the location of our rig. So now our rig is in the T position that we originally started off with, as far as when we brought this rig in and set it up. So I'm going to press A to deselect. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to object mode. So I'm clicking near the bottom and then going to select object mode with the rig currently selected on. Sometimes I'll call it a rig, sometimes I'll call it an armature. With that selected on, I'm going to press M to bring up our move to layer, and then I'm going to left click to move the rig out of this layer. Now that rig is still attached to this robot mesh. It's just on this layer here. So when I hold shift and I click, now you can see right here, both of these layers are selected. That's why we can see both the robot mesh as well as the rig. I did that, it's that being moving the rig to another layer, just because it makes it easier as far as us working. It's just an easy way to get the rig out of the way. Nothing is lost by us having the rig on a separate layer. So I'm going to hold shift and then I'm going to click on that bottom layer and let go of shift, just so we have the rig out of the way. Okay, what we're going to need to do now is we're going to need to make some vertex groups. Vertex groups are an easy way to select geometry in Blender. They have multiple uses, but one of the uses is just making geometry easy to select. So we're going to click on our robot mesh. We're going to look toward the menu towards our upper right, and we're going to go to our object data button. Looks like kind of like a triangle. We're going to left click there. Here in this menu, we can see vertex groups as well as shape keys. For now, what we want to do is we want to put our attention on the vertex groups. So with our mesh selected, and currently we're in object mode, we're going to left click and then select edit mode to go into edit mode. Okay, in Blender, where you look towards the bottom, you have vertex select, edge select, as well as face select. We currently are on face select, and you want to be on face select as well. So being on face select, what you want to do is hover over this geometry here and then press L. We want to select all of the geometry other than the parts like right here and right here. And the reason why we don't want to select these parts is because these parts are, I think, the easier parts where you can see that this is part of a vehicle. So we want to leave these parts right here. So we're going to hover here, press L, hover here, press L. We're dodging this whole area right here. Press L, 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 as well as L. Okay, so with that selected, we're going to go to our vertex group. We're going to click plus. And then with this plus selected, we're going to double click here. We're going to name this robot parts 1 and then press enter. And then make sure you click assign. So now with this assign, this geometry is connected to this vertex group. So to make sure we have what we need, we're going to press H. Okay, so we have this right here. So we're going to press hover here, we're going to press L. We're going to hover here, we're going to press L. And then what we're going to do is left click here and select assign. Then we're going to press H. And I think we have what we need now, which is excellent. When I say what we need, I mean what we need as far as what we need to be selected and assigned to this robot parts 1. Okay, now what we want to do is we want a second robot parts group. So we're going to click this plus button. We're going to double click here. There we go. We're going to name this robot parts 2, then press enter. And then with that there, now we want to select these big pieces here. So we're going to press, we can press Z and go to wireframe, or we can go near the bottom, left click and select wireframe. We're going into wireframe so we can easily select this entire piece of this mesh. So I'm going to press B for box select and just select all that mesh. So there's most of the meshes selected. There's different pieces here that haven't been selected. So I'm going to hold Control and press L, and then that just allows Blender to easily grab those other pieces. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to press, I'm going to go a little higher. I'm going to press B for box select, left click and drag over here. I think we got most of them. When I hold Control, press L just in case. Okay, so now with that selected there, I'm going to left click here and then left click to go back to solid mode. With this robot parts 2 selected, I just wanted to come back to solid mode. The important part is you have this selected. Now the important part is that you have robot parts 2 selected. You want to left click assign. So now we're going to press A to deselect. Okay, since we have our vertex groups set up, what we can do now is hold Alt, and while holding Alt, we can press H to bring back our geometry that we had before, before we had previously hidden. So I'm going to press A to deselect now. Okay, what we want to do now is go near the bottom, left click near edit mode and select object mode. We now want to go to what looks like our wrench, which has our modifier panels. Where we have our mirror modifier, we want to click right next to clipping to take away this check mark, so our clipping is turned off for now. Now we want to look to our solidify modifier. We want to temporarily make it so you can't see the solidify modifier. We want to do this just so that as we work with this transformation, things run as far as our computer as smoothly as possible. So to do that, we just click right here. And now the solidify modifier is temporarily turned off. Now with that done, we want to left click on what looks like this triangle. This has our vertex groups here. Now we want to look to our shape keys here. Our shape keys allow us to change the form of a mesh or transform a mesh. So what we want to do is click this plus button here. This plus button gave us the basis for our shape as our first shape key. And generally this first shape key, you really don't want to work with this. This is just the basis for all other shape keys. So now we're going to click the plus button again. So now this shape key is where we're going to actually begin to work as far as working on our robot transformation, or from vehicle mode to our robot transformation. Okay, so with this shape key selected and with our robot mesh selected, we're going to go near the bottom to where you see object mode, left click, and then left click on edit mode. Now what we want to do is we want to select robot parts 1 from our vertex groups. Then we want to select. So now we have all the different geometry from what we had previously selected as far as this robot parts 1 vertex group. So with this done, what we want to do is hold Alt, and then while holding Alt, press E. This brings up our extrude menu, and we want to select individual faces. I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to pull down slightly. And then I'm going to left click to lock that in. Now I'm going to press A to deselect. Now what I did was, when I used that extrude individual faces, that's a quick way to give extra detail to a mesh, and that's why we came here for that. So with that done, we're going to left click and then go back to object mode. And then we have when we look at our shape keys, we have this key 1. When we take this value up, you can see there's that extra detail coming in. So now we have control over that from using this value slider, and by being selected on our shape key named key 1. Okay, so we're going to double click on this shape key. We're going to name this more detail and then press enter to lock that in. Okay, now we need another shape key, so we're going to go to this plus, click that. With our robot mesh selected, we're going to go down next to object mode, and then we're going to select edit mode. Okay, now what we're going to do is, with our vertex groups part 1 selected, we're going to go to select and then left click to selected. And now what we're going to do with this is, first we need to go to our pivot point option. You can see this near the bottom of the screen. And our default pivot point is the medium point. We're going to left click, and we're going to change this from the medium point to the individual origins selection. So now you can see this is set for individual origins. That's what it looks like. And what we're going to do now is very simple. We're going to press the S key to scale, and then we're going to press the 0 key to scale down, and then we're going to left click to lock that in. And basically what we did was, by selecting individual origins, each piece of our mesh, we were able to scale down where it was at. I'm going to press A to deselect, and I'll explain more. It'd be, I think, easier for you to see what we're doing as far as that. So I'm going to click and go to object mode. So here we are in object mode, right? So here's the shape key we just made. So when I take this value up, do you see how all of our geometry is scaling down? All right, so it scales down almost, so it's almost totally out of the way. And then pay attention to how it looks like it's growing back. Now this individual origins, normally if we scaled all this geometry down, it would scale away. It would move, take this piece for instance, it would move like up and over. But because this is set for individual origins, this piece of leg scales down and it stays basically right where it's at. And that's what we wanted. So the individual origins, this is important that you get this. Individual origins is what's making this scale work or look right as far as this transformation. You need to have your pivot point set to individual origins. Okay? Your default pivot point is medium point. So if you scale down on the medium point, it's not going to look right. Okay. Okay, so now with that done, let's click here. And we're going to name this RP1, scale down, and then press enter. And that stands for Robot Parts 1 Scale Down. Okay, so now we need another shape key, so we're going to click the plus next to our, in our shape keys option. With our robot mesh selected, we're going to go near the bottom where we have object mode. Be aware we still have our individual origins set to, set as our pivot point instead of Blender's default pivot point. So we're going to left click and then go to edit mode. We came here to edit mode to work with our next shape key. What we want to do is go to robot parts 2 and then select. So now we have that geometry selected. So what we want to do is press S to scale on the S to scale 0, no axis. So we're pressing 0, and then you can press enter or left click to lock that in. Be aware we still have our individual origins set. Keep saying this just because this is very important that for this to work right, this needs to be set to individual origin. So I'm going to press A to deselect. We're going to left click here and then go back to object mode. Now that we have our shape key set for that, we can go to this pivot point option and change this from individual origins back to Blender's default pivot point, which is the median point. Okay, so here is our shape key right here. If we take this value up, you can see that our other pieces scale down. Okay, so we're going to double click here and name this RP2 scale down, and we can press enter or left click. I'm going to press enter to lock that in. Okay, we actually have most of the work we need done as far as this part of our transformation. If you're looking at the appearance and wondering why this might look a little bit different than when we started, by the way, I currently have this set to solid mode. If I click material mode, you can see our normal map on there. Currently we're in solid mode, so if you were thinking about that, I said, let me tell them. So I'm going to hold shift, and the reason why I'm holding shift is because our vehicle is on this layer here. I'm going to left click. So here's our vehicle mode, right? Our vehicle is directly in the center, and this is a good thing. What we want to do is press A to deselect, and then let's click on our vehicle, hold shift, and then click on our tires. I'm holding the middle mouse button just to take a look. So I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate is what I'm doing. I'm going to click front view to go back to front view. And now I'm going to push this vehicle down so that it's pretty much on where our robot is standing. Okay, for our vehicle mode, our tires are separated from our vehicle. We want to join our tires to our vehicle. So first we want to click on our tires. We're currently selected on the vehicle mode, or I'm currently selected on the vehicle mode. I'm going to click on the tire. Now I'm selected on the tires. You can tell I'm selected on the tires because they're highlighted orange. So with the tires selected first, I'm going to hold shift, and then while holding shift, I'm going to left click on our main vehicle part and letting go of shift. With the object selected in that order, I'm going to hold control and then press J. And what happened is now these tires are now connected to our vehicle mode mesh. So now with these being one object, we want to click on our modifier tab. We want to look down to where we have our subdivision surface modifier. Let's take this down, the view down to 1. And this will just help us as far as working to make things work smoothly as far as just working through this transformation process. Okay, something else that we want to do is with this mesh selected on, we want to left click near the bottom, click edit mode. We're on face select, which is good. If you're not on face select, make sure you're on face select. You're going to press A to select your entire mesh. You're going to press U to bring up your UV mapping, UV mapping menu, and then you're going to select Smart UV Project. And then you're just going to see this pop up, and you're going to click OK. All right, so we're going to press A to deselect. The reason why you did that was just so that Blender took a Smart UV projector to help us as far as different things that we might want to do in the future. That's not what we're going to be using right now, but we definitely want to have that. And because it was fairly easy to do, now it's done. As far as the UV unwrapping that you just did, you're like, hey, what is that? What is it? What's going on? If you're not interested in adding color or textures to your mesh or normal maps in the future, then it's not your concern. I would recommend that you do have that UV. And when I pressed, selected everything, pressed U, UV unwrapping menu popped up, and then I clicked Smart UV Project. It's in Blender now, so it's there for you. I would recommend that you do that, so that you have it for the future. Okay, so with that being said, what we're going to do now is go to our menu. We're going to click right. Our robot mesh is here. It's not in this edit mode. I don't want to currently see it here. So what I'm going to do is go to where we see View Global/Local. I'm going to click here. So now we see just our vehicle mesh here. So what we want to do is we're going to left click near the bottom. I'm going to go from solid to wireframe. And we're actually going to separate this mesh up into 3 different pieces now. To do that, I'm going to hold Control. I'm going to hold the right mouse button. And then I'm going to grab all of this mesh right here. And then with that mesh selected, I'm going to click right here. I'm going to press P to press P to bring up our separate menu. Then I'm going to choose selection. So now this part of the mesh is its own separate object. So I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, now I'm going to go to the front part of this. I'm going to press B for box select. Select all of this part of the mesh right here. And with that selected, I'm going to press P. This brings up our separate menu, and I'm going to choose selection. So now that's its own object. I'm going to press A, then A again to deselect. Now I'm going to go near the bottom and click to go back to solid mode. And now I'm going to left click near where we see edit mode, and then I'm going to select object mode. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go to View Global/Local to go back to global mode. And we're going to left click on this front piece of the car, front part of the car. And with our modifier menu, we're going to take away clipping. We're going to click on the middle part of the car, take away clipping, click on the back part of the car, and then take away clipping as well. Okay, we need our vehicle mode to be smaller than our robot mode, so we're going to click here. I'm now going to hold Shift, and then while holding Shift, I'm clicking here as well as here. Now I'm going to press S to scale down to about there. I'm going to go to front view. I'm going to push this down like that. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. Then I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, currently we have 2 layers selected. I'm going to hold Shift, and while holding Shift, I'm going to left click here. So we just see our vehicle mode. I'm going to left click front view. Our 3D cursor is in the center of our scene. If your 3D cursor isn't in the center of your scene, you can hold Shift and then press C. With the 3D cursor being in the center, I'm going to hold Shift, then press A, and that brought up our Add To menu. I'm then going to go to Armature and select Single Bone. So there's our single bone right there. I'm going to take the manipulator and push this down, holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I push this into the car. I'm going to go to our Puppeteer button, and then I'm going to click X-ray so we can see the armature bone. Pull this back. Now I'm going to go to edit mode for our armature bone. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan up. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button. Control as I push the middle mouse button up to zoom in. I'm going to press A, then I'm going to press S, and I'm just making this armature bone bigger. I'm now going to left click to go to right view. I'm going to push this armature bone down. With this armature bone selected, I'm going to hold Shift, press D, and then right click. Now I duplicated the bone, I'm pushing this bone forward. I'm pressing A to deselect. I'm left clicking, holding Shift, pressing D, pulling this bone back. Now I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. So we have a new armature that will connect up with the other armature. This will allow us to control these 3 different parts. So what we want to do is go to pose mode, and in pose mode we're going to click this first armature bone. We're going to click on this vehicle piece right here. We're going to hold Shift, and then while holding Shift, click here. All right, so basically what we did is we were in pose mode. We clicked on the vehicle mode, that brought us into object mode. We held Shift, and then we re-clicked on this bone here. and that brought us back in pose mode. We want to parent this piece to here. So typically you have to select the object first and then the bone. So we have that order now. If you don't understand that, you'll get to see that process again on these other two bones. So with this object selected and then the bone selected second, I'm going to hold Control and then press P. This brings up our Set Parent To menu, and I'm going to select bone. So now I'm going to press A to deselect. So we're in pose mode of the armature that's made up of these three bones, right? So now I'm clicking on this bone right here. The reason why I'm clicking on this bone is because I want Blender to know that I want to deal with this bone. We're currently in pose mode. I didn't do it yet, but I'm about to click on this mesh right here. So this vehicle mesh is made up of one part, two parts, three parts. I'm about to click on this middle part, right? When I click on it, which I haven't done yet, we'll be taken out of pose mode and in the object mode. Okay, I'm not holding shift or anything. So now I left click. Now we were taken into object mode. So now I have this selected. You can tell it's selected because it's highlighted orange. Now I'm holding shift. So I have this object selected. I have my hand holding the shift key down, and with my hand pushing down the shift key, I left click on this bone. Now I'm letting go of the shift key. The reason why I held the shift key was I need to have this selected first, and then this being selected second in that order. So with them selected in that order, what I'm going to do now is hold Control. While holding Control, I'm going to press P. This brings up our Set Parent To menu, and then I'm going to select bone. Okay, so I'm going to press A to deselect. We're still in pose mode. So I'm clicking on this bone now to let Blender know I want to work with this bone. I'm going to click here in a moment. When I click here, we're going to be taken from pose mode, which we're currently in, to object mode. So I am going to left click now. So now we're in object mode, right? My hands aren't on any buttons. However, now I'm holding down the shift key. And while holding the shift key, I'm left clicking on this bone here. I'm letting my hand off of shift. And now we were brought back into pose mode. So with this selected first and then this bone selected second, I'm going to hold Control. While holding Control, I'm going to press P. This brings up our Set Parent To menu. I'm then going to select bone. I'm now going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we are going to click near the bottom, go to Edit Mode, and then here in Edit Mode, we're going to click this bone first, hold Shift. I'm still holding Shift. I'm clicking this bone second. And now I'm clicking this bone last. I'm letting go of Shift. I'm now going to hold Control, then press P. This brings up our Make Parent menu. I'm then going to select Keep Offset. I'm then going to press A to deselect. Okay, with that done, now we can left click near the bottom, go to pose mode, click this one bone, press G, and our entire vehicle mode will move. However, we can click this bone here, press R to rotate, and be able to rotate there. I'm going to right click. To get out of that, I'll press A to deselect, and then as well as the back, we can press R to rotate, and we can rotate here as well. I'm pressing R. When you press R in Blender, it's almost like it almost seems like a quick way of doing undo. So I'm going to press A to deselect now. Okay, what we're going to do now is left click near the bottom, go to object mode. We're going to click on the front part of our vehicle. We're going to go to our modifiers tabs, and we're going to temporarily turn off the bevel modifier as well as the subdivision surface modifier. We're going to do this for all the different pieces of our meshes just to make things smoother as we work. So I'm just clicking on all of them and just temporarily turning off those modifiers. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to left click on the layer that has our robot mesh on it. When I left clicked on the layer, I deselected the other layer. That's why it disappeared. That's why you only see this layer. However, the vehicle mode mesh is still there. We're just currently selected on this layer. It was just, if you were like, what happened to it? We clicked on another layer. And we don't want to see the vehicle mode right now. So I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan again. Okay, now I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to click the layer that has our armature in it. I'm now going to left click on our armature, and then with that selected, I'm going to left click, and then I'm going to go to pose mode. So we want to do an animation, and this animation is going to help us, directly help us in this transformation. So currently we're in the Blender's default workspace. We're going to click here and then go to the animation workspace. So I'm rolling the mouse wheel to zoom back, holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan, holding the middle mouse button to rotate, holding shift and the middle mouse button to pan. Okay, our transformation is going to take about 10 seconds, at least for our initial setup of it. So Blender's default timeline is 10 seconds. So I'm going to just click here to make our timeline indicator go to the all the way to the end, frame 250. I'm now going to right click and drag this timeline indicator to about 225. You can look here and see where your timeline indicator is at as far as which frame it's currently on. Okay, what we want to do now is look towards the bottom of our screen. See these two keys? We want to left click them and then select lock rot. And what that does is when we select something like our rig and then put a keyframe in it, we can press I and Blender will automatically put a location rotation keyframe on what we currently have selected. Okay, let's set up an interesting pose. So the pose we're setting up now is going to be the pose that our character ends up in. A lot of times in animation, it's useful to start off with the end before the beginning. So I'm just going to pull this leg out. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis like this. And now what I can do is with this bone posed right here, I can go to this button. This is the copy pose button. I'm going to left click on copy pose. And now when I click this button, which I haven't clicked yet, this bone here, which is the opposite of this bone, will do the pose that this bone is doing, just towards that direction. So now I'm clicking it now, and there we go. I'm going to click the waist bone and make the character bend down some. When we bent down, see how the knees are pointing towards each other? I can click here, press R to rotate on the Y axis like that. And then I can do copy pose, and then paste the pose for that side. I'm going to click here, press R to rotate on the Y axis like this. Then I'm going to click here, press R to rotate on the X axis like this. I'll press R to rotate on the Z axis like this. I'll click the pose bone here, press R to rotate, to bend the fingers. I'll hold shift, and then while holding shift, click these two bones, and then I'll press copy, and then press paste pose for the other side. Now I'll press A to deselect. Okay, now I'm going to click this bone here, press R to rotate on the X axis to make that go forward. I'm going to hold control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm going to click the head bone, press R to rotate on the X axis to lift the head up. Holding the middle mouse button to rotate. Now I'm going to press A to deselect. Now I'm going to press A to select all of the bones. Now I'm going to press I to put a keyframe in for all of the bones that are currently selected. Okay, what we want to do now is let's click on our robot mesh. Let's click on our object data button. We're going to scroll down. I'm going to go to more detail. I'm going to slide this down. And then while clicked on this more detail, I'm going to go over to slider. I'm going to press I. I'm going to go to RP1 scale down, left click there, hide over to slider, press I. Click on RP2 scale down, hover over the slider, then press I. Okay, now I'm going to click on the armature. I'm going to click to go to frame 225, or 25, sorry, frame 25, which you can see right here. I'm now going to press the T key to bring up the properties panel. I'm going to select display. I'm going to go to right view. I'm going to go to view perspective / orthographic. I'm going to zoom back. Actually, I want to make sure I grab this bone right here. So I'm going to left click here, press H to hide that bone. Now I'm going to go to right view. And now here in right view, I'm going to press A to select everything. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis, 90, and then press enter to lock that in. Okay, I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis just to rotate this up, something like that. I'm going to press I to put in the keyframes for this just so that this stays where it's at. So we move the timeline without the keyframes. The keyframes will automatically go to the one set keyframe. So now that we have the keyframe set for here, though we have more work to do, we won't lose, you know, just the position that we have right now. So we're gonna hold Shift the middle mouse button to pan up, hold Control the middle mouse button to zoom in. And for our arms, I need to click here. I'm holding the middle mouse button. So the character is down. We're looking up. I just rotate the screen so it was easier to work here. So I'm going to press R to rotate on the, oops, I'm right clicking, R to rotate on the Z axis like this. Now, and this is the view that you actually see. This is the right view. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis like this. Clicking here, I'm pressing R to rotate on the X axis like this. And now with that work done, I'm going to hold Shift, click here. I let go of Shift. Now I'm going to select Copy Pose. Now I'm going to select Paste Pose. Now I'm going to press I to insert the keyframes for that pose. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to click here, push this leg in like this, holding the middle mouse button, pushing this in, something like that. I'm going to left click on this bone here. I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate the view. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y axis, like that. Click here, push that in more like that. I'm going to hold Shift, select here. I'm then going to go to Copy Pose, and then I'm going to select Paste the Reverse Pose. There we go. I'm going to press A to deselect, A to select everything. Then I'm going to press I to put a keyframe in for this current pose. Okay, so now I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to select the layer that has our vehicle on it. There's our vehicle there. I'm going to click on the armature that is connected to our vehicle, or our vehicle is connected to. I'm going to click near the bottom, go to Pose Mode. I'm going to click our main bone for our vehicle mode. Roll the mouse wheel to zoom back. I'm going to push this forward. As I'm pushing this forward, I'm thinking about where the head is at. I want the head of our robot to be about where the windshield is at. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm holding Shift and the middle mouse button to pan down. I'm going to hover here, left click to give more space. So our arms are pretty well in. We need this part to come up, and you'll see, hopefully this will make more sense. I know this is kind of jumbled here. I need to get this leg positioned here. So what I'm going to do is there we go. Pushing this down. That seems to have done the trick. Much better. Push this. So now what I can do is with this bone selected, I'll select Copy Pose, and then I'll select Paste Reverse Pose. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to get, I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis. I'm trying to get our robot mesh. I'll press R to rotate on the X axis. To basically have its body be inside of the car. R to rotate on the Y axis. R to rotate on the Z axis. I can select copy, pose, and then select paste, reverse pose. I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to click here. We're going to push this down. Push that forward. Then we're going to select copy pose, copy reverse pose. We'll click here. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. We'll press R to rotate on the Y axis. We'll click here. We'll press R to rotate on the Y axis. Press R to rotate on the X axis. And then with this bone selected, I'll select copy pose and then paste reverse pose. Then I'll press A and then A to select everything. Then I'll press I to insert the keyframes in for that pose. See this window right here? This window is actually meant to help you animate right now. You can't see what we're focused on. All this window really is just a copy of this window. It's just preset up when you go to animation. So what I'm doing is I'm scrolling in here, hovered over this window. I'm going to hold shift and then press space, and that just zoomed into that window. I'm going to press N to bring up our properties panel for that window on the side. I'm going to go to display. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to put a check mark next to only render. I'm now going to press Z, and then I'm going to select solid mode. And I'm now going to hold shift, and then while holding shift, press space to just put that window back. Now I'm going to hover here, then press N to take away that properties panel. Okay, I'm going to click on our vehicle mode. I'm then going to click and then go to edit mode. We can kind of see through our mesh here, so I'm going to click this button here. And what I'm going to do now is press C for paint select. We're currently on face select. I'm going to paint this here. Then I'm going to right click to get out of paint select. Then I'm going to hold control, then press L to select this geometry here. I'm going to zoom in here, press C for paint select, select this geometry that I didn't get. For this geometry, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to deselect that. I'm going to right click to get out of paint select, hold control the middle mouse button to zoom back. I'm going to press C for paint select, hold the middle mouse button, deselect there. What I want to do with this is I'm actually going to press the P key. This brings up our separate menu. I'm then going to choose selection. So now this is its own separate object. Now with that done, I'm going to left click here, then left click here to go to object mode. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the armature for our vehicle mode. I'm now going to press A to deselect and A to select all of the different pieces of our armature, and I want the vehicle mode for this to be the rest position for our vehicle mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to pose, and then I'm going to go to apply, and then I'm going to select apply pose as rest pose. And now that I did that, when we go to our edit mode, our mesh won't jump. So with that done, I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm then going to left click here. I'm then going to left click here to go to edit mode. Okay, now I'm going to left click on this armature bone right here. I'm going to hold shift, then press D. I'm then going to right click to keep that bone in place. I'm then going to pull this bone out to the side like this. I'm going to push this bone in place, and then when I'm pushing it in place, I'm pushing it in place so we'll be able to control this mesh right here. So with this bone here, we're going to want to duplicate this to the other side. So I'm going to press the N key, and I'm scrolling down so we can name this bone. So I'm going to name this wheel.L and then press enter. So because I gave it this .L, now we'll be able to use Symetrisize and get this bone on the other side, so we can use another bone to control the wheel over there. Just held the middle mouse button to rotate. Okay, so now with this selected, what I'm going to do is go to Armature. I'm going to go up to Symetrisize, then I'm going to left click. And when I did that, Blender automatically put another bone, the bone that we had selected, another bone just like this, however on the opposite side, which is great. It also named that bone wheel.r for us. So I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go near the bottom. I'm going to change from edit mode to pose mode. I'm going to click on our bone. I'm going to then left click the mesh that's basically our tire. I'm going to hold shift, and then while holding shift, I'm going to click the bone. I'm then going to hold control. While holding control, I'm going to press P. This brings up our set parent to menu. I'm then going to select with empty groups. Now I'm going to press A to deselect. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on our bone without holding shift or anything. I'm just left clicking on this mesh here. Now I'm going to hold control. While holding control, press the tab key. This brought us into weight paint mode. And now I'm going to left click near the bottom and go from weight paint mode to edit mode. If you look in our object data menu, you can see that we're dealing with this wheel.l bone right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press A to select the bone, and then I'm going to click assign. Now I'm going to press A to deselect. So now I'm going to left click and then go to object mode. Okay, now when I click on this bone, if I pull this to the side, you can see I have the ability to control just this tire. So I left clicked, I'm still holding down the left mouse button. Now I'm gonna, while holding the left mouse button, right click just to get this to jump right back into position. You could have also just held Alt and then pressed G, and that would have got you back to that position as well. I clicked on this button, I'm gonna hold control and the middle mouse button. So now the same thing, I'm gonna push this out. This time I just let go, so I have control of that. So I'm going to now hold Alt, and while holding Alt, I'm going to press G to get that bone to go back to its original position. I'm then going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go from pose mode. So I'm near the bottom. I'm going to click and then go to edit mode. And I don't want all of these bones parented to this bone. I want to be able to rotate this bone freely, which gives me control over the middle part of the body. So I'm going to left click this bone. I'm going to hold shift and then press D. I'm then going to right click. I duplicated that bone. I'm now going to pull this bone straight up. So when I say it, or this bone, I mean, I'm pulling up that bone right there. Now I'm going to select all of the other bones. I'm holding shift. So currently we're in edit mode, and now lastly I'm selecting this bone. So I'm letting go of shift, and with the bone selected in that order, I'm going to hold control, then press P. This brings up our make parent menu. I'm then going to select keep offset. So now all of the bones are parented to that bone right there. I'm now going to press A to deselect. Okay, what we're going to do now is click near the bottom, go to object mode. I'm going to click on the front part of our car. In our object data menu, I'm going to click plus to put on a basis shape key. I'm going to click plus again. I'm then going to left click near the bottom, go to edit mode. I'm then going to press A to select everything. I'm going to press S to scale, then press 0. And then I'm going to press enter to lock that in. I'm then going to press A to deselect. I'm then going to go to near edit mode and select object mode. Okay, now I'm going to do the same for the back or the middle piece. I'm going to click, hit the plus button twice, go to edit mode, press A to select, S, 0, enter, then press A to deselect. I'm then going to go near the bottom, select object mode. I'm going to click on our back. Same thing, plus twice, go to edit mode, Press A to select everything, then S, 0, and then enter, and then come back to object mode. Okay, the reason why we did that was that will allow us to move our vehicle parts out of the way by shrinking them to the point where you just about can't see them. Okay, so what we're going to do is press A to deselect now. We also want to click on our wheels here, and for our shape key here, same thing, plus, left click near edit mode, press A to select, S, 0, and then enter, then press A to deselect, and then go near the bottom, then come back to object mode. I'll press A to deselect now. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to our chest object here. I'm looking at the mech, the transformer standing up. So this area here, there's no movement. So about here, I'm going to press, I'm not going to press anything yet. I'm going to click on our armature bone. I'm going to go to pose mode, then I'm going to press I. Now I'm going to make this go back. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have our mech go all the way to standing up, our transformer. So about 210. What I'm going to do is lift this up, push this straight back into the chest. A lot of times when you're animating, it's easier to start with the ending. Rotate on the x-axis. So I'm positioning this piece in the chest where I would like it to end up. So now I'm going to press I to lock that keyframe in. I'm going to zoom back now. I go here. Press R to rotate on the x-axis. Have this come down like that. I'm going to press I to put a keyframe in. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on that. I'm going to go to its shape key. I'm going to hover over the slider and then press I. Now as it goes up, I'm going to take this slider up. Press I. I'm going to take this all the way up, then press I. And as this comes up, I think what I'm going to do is see how it goes up right there. I think right here it starts to move there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right to here. I'm going to click this bone. I'm going to press R to rotate on the x-axis slightly, then press I. And then here, I'm gonna hold Alt, then press R, then press I. So a little bit of anticipation. As it comes up. Just looking at it right now. I think I want it to, okay, it's still there. I think I want it to stay like this. So I'm going to press I if it's coming up, then change there. Yeah, like that better. It holds. So what I did was I just made it hold its size a little longer. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna scrub back towards the beginning. And about here, what we're gonna do is click on our armature. I guess frame 80. I'm looking at frame 80, so frame 60 to 80. What I want to do is I'm holding the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to click on this bone here. I'm going to press I to insert a keyframe. I'm now going to go to frame 80. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y-axis 180, and then press enter to lock that in. I'm going to bring this up some like that, and I'm going to press I to put a keyframe in for that. So now let's see how that looks. Okay. Okay, I'm going to press the N key to take away that properties panel. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click here, press I. I'm going to move to about 10 frames. Bring this back. That. Then up. Like this. I'm now going to copy the pose and then paste the reverse pose on the other side. I'm going to hold the middle mouse button, rotate. I'm holding shift. Now I'm going to press I to lock a keyframe in for that. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. So here I'm going to copy, then paste the reverse pose. Click here, then press I. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click here. I'm going to go to our shape keys. I'm going to click plus to make a new shape key. I'm going to then go to edit mode. I'm going to push to the side, bring this back, and I'm basically trying to match this up. I'm going to hold shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm then going to go near the bottom, then click near edit mode, and then go back to object mode. Okay, so with this shape key, I'm going to take this slider all the way up. I'm going to hover here, press I, and then I'm going to go to here, bring this slider down, I'll press I, see it on different angles. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna right here. I'll come back to here. So this slider here, that shape key, I'm gonna hover over the slider, press I, move forward. And bring this all the way up, then press I. See how that looks. Okay, so what we're going to do is select our mesh here. We're going to go to, this is our main vehicle parts here. So we're going to take this, the slider is going to be all the way up here. Press I, and then we'll come back here. And we'll press I here. So I realize now my face is in it. Hopefully you can see enough around there. So right here is the slider. Okay. Okay, I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to rotate. I'm going to click on our robot armature, transformer armature, the main one. I'm going to go to frame 65. I'm clicked on the shoulder. I'm going to hold Alt, press R. I'm then going to click here. I'll click here. I'll press R to rotate on the X axis here. I'm going to click here, press R to rotate. Oh, wrong. Trying to grab the little bone that controls our hands. There we go. I'm I press R to rotate on the X axis here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom in. I'm holding Shift. I'm selecting here, here, as well as here. I'm going to hold Control and the middle mouse button to zoom back. I'm going to select Copy Pose and then Paste Reverse Pose. And now I'm going to press A to deselect, A to select everything, and then I'm going to press I to put a keyframe in for that pose. Hold the middle mouse button to rotate now. Okay, so now we're looking to see where the tires first appear, so they're right there. So what we're going to do is go to Options, go to Auto IK, click here, push this down like that. I'm going to go to the other side, same thing, push this down like that. I'm now going to press A, then A again. I'm then going to press I. Okay, so looking good so far. Okay, we're going to take this, move this up, over. I'm going to press R to rotate on the Z axis, -90, then press Enter. Move that in place. I'm going to press R to rotate on the X axis. Like that. I'm going to copy this pose by selecting here, then paste the reverse pose. I'm now going to press I. I'm going to hold Shift and middle mouse button to pan. I'm going to click here. I'm then going to press I. Okay, so let's see. So because we have this in a rest position, we'll come to where nothing is moving yet. We'll click, I'll hold Shift, click here, hold Alt, press G, as well as R, then I'll press I. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this pose, copy the pose, go to here. I'm going to paste the pose, press I, move to the side. I'm going to click copy pose again. I'm going to paste the pose. Let me right click on just this side. Now I'm going to pull to the side like this. Then I'm going to copy this pose, paste the reverse pose, hold Shift, then click there, then press I. Now let's go look. Nice. So as we're coming from here to here, what we want to do is we're going to click here, Okay, I'm going to hold the mouse button to rotate the view. Okay, so I'm going to come to about here. I'm going to hover over the slider. I'm then going to press I. I'm going to frame 100. I'm going to take this slider all the way up. I'm then going to press I. Looking. Okay, I'm gonna go to here. I'm gonna select the car armature. So I'm gonna press I. Then here I'm gonna press R to rotate on the X-axis. That, then I'm going to press I again. Okay. Okay, for here I'm going to click here. I'm going to press I. Push this forward like this. Down some like that. I'm going to press I. Here I'm going to take the torso here, click here, I'm going to press R to rotate on the Y axis like this. R rotate on the Y axis like that. This auto IK, pull to the side some. Unclick that, press R to rotate on the Y axis, there we go. Turn the auto IK back on. That. I'm going to press I. Push this here. this, down like that. Press R to rotate on the x-axis like this. I'll press I. I don't like how they're moving at the same time, so this keyframe here, I'll zoom in here. I'm going to click this arrow button here, which lets me see just the keyframes for that bone. I'm going to click here. See this line right here? This line right here is showing the keyframes just for that bone, which is also that yellow line right there. I'm going to press G. Just take that back some. Okay, I'm going to click here. I'm going to hover over the slider, press I. I'm going to take this sliders all the way up, press I. Okay, here I'm going to click the chest bone, press R to rotate on the Z axis, Y axis, like this. Okay, pull this out to the side. Press. Or rotate on the Y axis. Press I. I'm going to go to display, click right view. I'm going to press D and draw a grease pencil line. So I put a line here. This is called a grease pencil. It's useful for making quick marks in Blender. It doesn't render. It's temporary and it's useful. So that's why I have a reference for the ground, for the arm. So I'll see that right there. So that's on the right orthographic. This is the ground. So I'll press R to rotate on the x-axis like this. Options. Pull this up like that. I'll press R to rotate on the Y axis like this, R to rotate on the Z axis like that. I'll press I. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go here. I'm right here. I'm going to click here, go to these shape keys. I'm going to take this slider up, hover here, press I. I'm going to take this all the way up here, about here. I'll press I. I think we're going to click here. I'm going to press I. Press R to rotate on the x-axis here. Press I. Press R to rotate on the x-axis like that. So let's see, let's press N. Go down to display, select only render. Okay, we're going to click here, back to only render. This is 0.2, wait a minute, this is 0.289, so we'll hover over the slider, we'll press I. I'm going to bring this back here. I'm going to set this to 0.289, press enter, then press I. Wait a second. To 89, press enter, and press I. one. Ambient occlusion. Now let's take this slider. Down here we'll press I. Press I. So for here, I'll take this one. Oh, I see. It's only render. And let's see what is. Okay. This here. Let's click here, press I. Just trying to get this up in more. I'll press I, copy, then paste the reverse side, press I. Copy that pose. Okay, copy this pose, go that back here, paste. Press I, copy it, paste the reverse, press I. Okay, so we're going to go back here. I'm going to press A to select everything. Select copy, pose. I'm going to go back to frame 1. I'm going to select paste pose, press I. I'm going to select only render. Click this. Up. I'm going to click I, and this part is sticking out here. So what we can do is right here up until this part. We can actually click here. We'll change this to lock rot scale now. Click here. Copy, paste the reverse. Press I. Till we get right here, and actually press A, and A to select everything, press I. So this time we're using location, rotation, scale. Come back here. Now we'll press S to scale. Then we'll press I. Click here. And this right here. Zooming in to see which, this right here, let's try deleting this. Press X, delete keyframes. That's just about it. Okay, I'm going to hold Shift and the mouse button, pan. See this line right here? That's our grease pencil line. So we can just click minus to remove that. I'm going to go to our material panel, and here's the color of our vehicle. We can actually use this color to help ourselves work. We have this background that almost matches this, matches the color of our vehicle mode. So what I'm going to do is click on this world tab. I'm going to go to horizon color. I'm going to click here. Then I'm going to go to world background. Okay, so what we want to do is actually take advantage of our materials here. So see, this part right here is basically supposed to be this part right here. So what we're going to do is take away that only render. And for this right here, we're going to go to edit mode. See how our, well, this is actually fine. This popping up. We want to make these vehicle pieces be the same color. So what we're going to do is go to our material tab. We have this material. This is fine. We want to click plus. So now what we want to do is hover here, press L. So all of this material here, as well as here, pressing L. Just hovering and pressing L. Okay, so with all that selected there, what we want to do is click New, and then right here we want to click here, and then we want to select Material 1, and then we want to left click Assign. So now I'm going to press A to deselect. I'm then going to left click here, go to Object Mode, and now that material color should actually help us as far as our transformation. Okay, I'm going to press the N key to take that away. I'm going to pull this out. I'm going to press the Home key. Click this so we can see all of our keyframes here. What I want to do is scale down these keyframes so it's not as long. I'm going to roll the mouse. So this timeline indicator R keyframes will scale down from here. I want this to be about around here. So we want to get this to about here. So I'm going to press A, then A to select everything, and everything should scale down this direction. So I'm going to press S to scale. Right there, it's around where I want. Excellent. Okay, I would like to give him a resting animation pose. I'm going to go right to frame 150. I'm going to click here, press A to select all of the bones, press I. I'm then going to go to about 185. I'm then going to press I. I'm then going to go around the middle. So I'll put a keyframe, one keyframe here. I put the same keyframe, same pose here. So there's same pose here as well as here. Okay, so what I want to do is press A to deselect. I'm going to click here. Push down, something like that. Press R to rotate on the X-axis like this. Click here, press R to rotate on the Y-axis like this. I'm going to press go here, copy the pose, paste the reverse pose on the other side. I'm going to click. It's hard to see if I'm clicking the finger control bone here. I'm going to press R. Now I'm going to do copy the pose, paste the reverse pose. Now I'm going to press A, then A again. Now I'm going to press I. And what we should have now is a resting pose. I'm going to click here. I'm going to click here. I'm going to make this a little longer by pressing A. Then my timeline indicator is right here, so I can push a bracket key. I'm going to press S to scale. I'm going to hold Shift and the middle mouse button to pan. And what I'm going to do is take these keyframes. I'm going to hold Shift, press D, duplicate them, pull them over to about here. Press A to deselect, come here, go here, press E. So what should happen is he should transform and then go into a resting pose. And oh, I see. This has to overlap here, so this has to be moved here. So I need to click here, press the bracket key, press G, and then move this to here. Still not. Okay, so I guess it's here. Bracket key, press G. Oh, I get him. So it's here, here. Okay. Shift D, move this over here. Apologize. I'm going to take this here. Here, I'm just going to click here. Down some, click here. Or rotate on the x-axis. Or rotate on the y-axis. I'm not copying the pose just to get some variation. I press A again to select everything, then I. Here, press E. Okay, so we should have press the N key. Only render. Let's click here. Let's take this back like that. Here. Let's see what we have. Click here. Down slightly and press I. Do not want that pose. I'm going to press X, delete. Here, I'm going to click here. Subtly. Move him. There we go. Click here. Go back here. Okay, I'm going to press the N key to take away that properties panel. I'm then going to click play. Very cool. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel, reshare them. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe and thank you for viewing.